Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to Enigmatica 2 Expert. So today what we're going to be doing is we are going to start Phase 1. I gotta move this mini-map a little bit so you guys don't see anything. But anyways, we're going to start Phase 1 of our another big build that we're about to start up. Kind of getting some different builds in place because, of course, I don't have all the materials to finish the ones that I have, and we're kind of switching. We're jumping around. We got a lot of big builds that we're working on, so. But we're starting our big agriculture build, and if you recall back at the beginning of the series, I talked about it a little bit, my plans for it, because of course these farms are more for decoration. These are our starting farms, but these are manual farms, and they're not really set up in a way that could be automated and be practical and look good and all that stuff. We are still going to be building these out. We're not done by any stretch of the imagination. And actually, after what we get done in today's episode, of course, I'm like normal. I'm recording this after having finished, so I can touch on all the bases that I need to. But with what we're going to be working on today, it's going to set us up to be able to finish out these farms, because I was actually getting to a point where I was running out of seeds. So we'll be all set on seeds, I can assure you, for all the crops that we don't currently have on the big farms. And then once we finish those out, of course, we're going to do 2x2 or 2 tall flowers and things like that. Just different fields of plants that we need to implement in these big farms, just for looks. This is all just for looks at this point, really. But anyway, so we're going to be starting the very first phase of our big agriculture build. And I decided the way our agriculture build is going to work is it's going to be separate sort of sections that we can build as kind of individual parts, but they all go together to make this big facility. And it was really important for me while I was coming up with the idea for this and building it out that I kept it from being industrial feeling, because I want to avoid industrial style builds on this series, of course. I want everything to feel kind of rustic-y in the agriculture area, and then kind of magical in the main base. And this is kind of a mix where the rustic and the magical meets is my goal with this big facility. But it's where all of our food automation, plant automation, our trees, our flowers, all that stuff is going to eventually be in this facility and kind of spread out around this facility, and it's all going to be automated. We're going to hopefully have all the Pam's Harvestcraft foods automated and stuff like that. So it's going to be a massive build. Today for phase 1, we're building the greenhouse, which is going to house all of our seed crops. Not any of the tree crops from Pam's, but only the seed crops from Pam's, vanilla, actual editions, all that stuff. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the speed build. And then we're going to come back at the end, talk a little bit, and kind of fill out everything and kind of bring it all full circle and finish it off. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, so starting out, what we're going to do is we're just going to plot out the build, kind of get it starting to be shaped up, starting with where we're actually like the primary entrance into the overall build, which we're not going to be building the primary entrance today. We're going to be building the greenhouse, which, as I said, is going to house all of our seed crops. Now, this excludes rustic, because we're going to be doing rustic differently. The reason being because we're going to have an herb farm that's just dedicated to like the 12, I think it's 12 rustic herbs. I've actually got it written down. Yeah, 12 different herbs. And then there's 3 additional crops within rustic, which is the chili pepper, the tomato, and the grapes. All 3 of which I think we're going to have a farm dedicated to those, or 3 farms dedicated to those possibly, just because I think they'll look better not being in the greenhouse. With the way that we have the greenhouse set up, I think it'll look better them not being in the greenhouse. So right here, we're kind of building this big entrance, and my idea is that we're going to kind of have this 3-story entrance, right, where you step in and then there's stairs going up and then stairs going up another floor. Not all of the build is going to be 3 stories, though. The greenhouse is only a single story. But this entrance is going to kind of separate and go into different areas, which we'll get into some of those a bit later. Actually, in phase 2, the build that we work on, actually has a second story entrance sort of a thing. So I'm just finishing out that speed build at the time of recording this audio. So, but yeah, so we're using a lot of infused wood. Now this pathway that I've got running right there, well, actually that one I think stays infused wood, but I use infused wood throughout these phases as pretty much our plotting wood. So it may eventually become like some kind of a stone or a pathway that, you know, maybe runs outside or something like that. But infused wood is cheap, and a lot of the build is going to be infused wood, so it's less changeover to just use infused wood. Not to mention we'll have uses for infused wood as we continue through with the series, so it's not really a loss to plot a lot of that out, in all honesty. So, but you can see right here that we're kind of building out the farmland. This is all fertile soil, of course. Thank you, Bone Blocks, for all of that. And so basically, we've got it set up so that there is, in the area of each harvester, there's going to be 16 plots, each plot containing 9 of a single crop. And let's see, I don't remember. I had to end up using 7 harvesters for everything that we wanted to cover in this greenhouse, so it is a fairly large build. Each one of those harvesters being set to a 15 by 15 range, so rather large structure, to say the least. But I think putting it all in one greenhouse, I mean, we could have had multiple smaller greenhouses, but instead we have this massive grand greenhouse, which I think turned out pretty cool. At first I was kind of on the fence. I was like, dude, I just want to split this up and have, you know, maybe like 4 greenhouses or something like that. But I think it kind of worked out for the best. I actually quite enjoyed it. So now we're building out the last segment of the harvesters, which is kind of at this far end here. And you'll notice I did put down some signs. And those signs there off in the distance, I did it off camera because it's not something you guys would probably want to watch. Because I'm just sitting there going through JEI at Pam's and putting down each seed. And then once I finished out the Pam's, which is actually on this segment that we're working on now, I had enough Pam's to fill out one of those harvester sections and part of the second one. But then I filled out the last bit with stuff like vanilla crops and extra utilities crops and actually additions crops. So, and random things, the cyclic or whatever. But yeah, we'll get into all of that in a bit. And then this last little segment here that I'm plotting out real quick is where we're going to farm cactus, sugarcane, melons, and pumpkins. So just a small little area there. So, all right. And then the next thing that we need to start doing is we need to start framing this. Start framing this build in and kind of getting the build coming along. Now, I will say overall, the speed build today is a bit shorter than some of our ones in the past. It's only about 18 minutes, but we do have some work after the speed build to do and just kind of go over. But yeah, it actually came together and it's pretty well done, except for some of the exterior, which I know I talk about a little bit at the end. Some of the exterior is not, mainly the underbelly of it and stuff like that, it's not completely done, and that's because it all kind of depends on how we end up shaping it all up, you know, as a whole. Because even though we're building this kind of in different phases and we're building these separate structures, it's all intended to be part of one overall grand structure. It's another one of our big builds for the series. You know, we've got the Citadel build going on, and then we've got this big massive monstrosity build. It's really it's getting to be pretty big, to say the least. And I've only worked on 2 phases of it so far, and I'm starting to kind of plan out a 3rd one. So okay, now unfortunately I noticed right now while I was editing this that I don't know, I guess the footage bugged or something, and my character's standing still in this recording. But if you notice around me, you can actually see I've been going around with Architecture Craft and placing out the Architecture Craft window frames, and then I'm coming through with Cyan stained glass and adding that to the windows, because I think I love Cyan stained glass. I know there's like 16 colors to choose from, but I absolutely love Cyan stained glass. So to make that, I just use the Botania flowers to farm that up. So I actually farmed some up on this recording, but it's pretty quick, so I don't know. especially without the character moving, it might be hard to keep up with. I did try re-editing the footage, that was saved, but it was something whenever the footage saved, I guess, that caused it to be bugged, which is unfortunate because it's a little bit of a longer segment, but anyways. But now we're going to go back to working on the beams here that kind of come out, and we're going to bring the exterior ones out and then bring the interior ones in, or the interior direction there or whatever. And then we are going to start raising them and actually bringing, that greenhouse look where we have the kind of the arched roof. I kind of wanted that flat segment, just to kind of give it some variation from just being a normal A-frame style roof, and then bring it up there like afterwards. So just something a little bit different and have a little bit more fun with it, I suppose. And so we're starting to bring up the A-frame style at this point and bringing that up. It's funny because if you notice, you can see when my character shifts, like, and kind of sneaks. You can actually see him sneak on camera, but he's stuck in place on the recording. It's so strange. And I actually had a ghost that was building this for me. It was a magical ghost building it all. So I don't know why it's doing that. So, but anyways, we're just doing all of the arches and stuff out of spruce, kind of keeping with that style. I will say that our build overall uses a lot of spruce, which I quite love the wood, and we're keeping it kind of consistent throughout. And then right here, you'll notice that the footage here bugged as well, but you can see that I am building this out. I don't know for sure why the footage bugged. I will say that I noticed while I was recording some of these segments that it almost seemed like it bogged a little bit, my computer, which I don't know. Windows is so bad about just updates like crazy. So I don't know if that's the cause. I mean, it just started happening. I will say I was watching Netflix while I was building this, but that's not uncommon. Usually whenever I'm doing speed builds, I'm watching Netflix on my second screen and, while I build. So, but I don't know. I don't know why my character kind of bugged out, but you can see I'm just kind of building out, shaping out the interior here, bringing the kind of the railings and stuff out, and getting all this kind of shaped up. Now my character's fixed, as you can see, and I'm actually zooming around around this area. So I don't know, and it was random because these recordings were all on the same day. I actually built this building out in one day. It was a very long day, and I woke up, started building this, and then I finished and went to bed, if that gives you any idea. The build itself actually went pretty quick. It was, I'd spent a little time crafting up some harvesters, and I spent a little bit of time crafting up some other stuff, which we'll be setting up later. But none of it was super elaborate to craft out. I mean, harvesters are fairly easy now that we have emeralds coming in. And then the last segment of the build took a little bit. I think I ended up, it was like a 20, of course I didn't sleep that day. I don't know, it was like a 26 hours or something in a row that I was working on this, but it was pretty long. I mean, I still took time to eat and everything, but it took a little bit, but it was basically a day for me. And then we're starting to bring out the cyan stained glass on the ceiling and then on the little slant parts there. And you will notice it's not like a complete A-frame house, or not really even an A-frame house, or greenhouse, I mean. It kind of slants up and then it comes back up to another flat section. Instead of kind of going with that very traditional style A-frame. So, but like I said, I wanted something a little bit different and whatnot, because we've got a number of spruce-based buildings within this compound, so I want them to kind of feel a little bit different as they come together. So, and yeah, and I'm just finishing out the glass. It took a little bit. It took a lot of glass. I think I ended up using six or seven stacks of glass just for the roof and everything. I think something like that. It was quite a bit. It was actually quite a fair amount. But do apologize about the character freeze. I think that's happened to us once or twice in the past, if I recall correctly. Doing the speed builds. So the mod is not perfect, but it is pretty good. It does pretty well at what it's intended to do. So Okay, so now we've finished out the roof, adding the glass, and now we're going to shape up these, kind of these joints of the building, where everything kind of meets together, and you will notice that my character is frozen again, but I didn't try to re-edit this one because I already had quite a few that was frozen, so I was like, okay, whatever. I will say that here pretty soon I'm going to be upgrading my computer. I don't know if that's actually going to do much of anything, but I'm going to be doing a new computer build, so we'll see how things go. Hopefully it goes well. This part here, you'll notice the character is still frozen, but I'm finishing out a couple window spots, and then I placed out the harvesters that are in there and just tested those to make sure everything was good. And then popping over here, we're going to start shaping up the far end, kind of the entrances and what could be considered like an exit, except it won't really exit out to anywhere within our build. So kind of the two far ends. There was a couple open sections within the build, and we'll get into where those go, because like I said, this is just kind of a phased build, but the paths where we're looking at right now, the paths that go left and right are open, and they remain open for this build, but we will be using those in some of the upcoming phases. So, because I wanted kind of the greenhouse to be somewhat of a, I mean, it's not really the center of the compound by any stretch of the imagination, but I kind of wanted it to be kind of a hub sort of thing where you have paths that go out in two different directions. So, and now what we're doing is we're adding spreaders. This was probably the most expensive part of the speed build, making out these spreaders and then the flare lenses, which I dyed the flare lenses lime green, and just put these little like almost these little like tube posts that kind of run down with the spreader, and seems like my footage is somewhat being buggy. I don't know, it's so hard to track it without the character. I do apologize, but yeah, right there I'm adding the railing. I'm invisibly putting out the railing that goes through there. And yeah, the mana spreaders, I just kind of tilted them. They've got flare lenses. They're not showing up in this footage, I think because it's being buggy, but I think the next bit of footage. And then I broke down those posts, and I'm actually adding architecture craft posts right there that kind of will support. It's spruce for the base, and then it's spruce wood that's the nailed panel for the main bits. But here you can see that the spreaders are running, and we've got that lime green kind of coming out. And now I'm just adding glowstone, because of course we'll want lights within our greenhouse for our plants. So I'm putting lit glowstone lamps from Quark at each intersection of the between that runs between the fields. So at least the character's working this time. It's kind of hit or miss, it seems like, with this footage. Even though this footage was all recorded on the same day, and it was actually all recorded in the same sitting. Well, not, but basically I was on Enigmatica all day. I didn't have to restart the pack or anything like that. But I am going to update the mod that I use for the speed building, which for some reason the name escapes me, but it's down in the description. I am going to update that because that could be maybe where my issues are coming from. I'm not for sure, but it is due for an update. And going through here, I'm adding just jungle wood for the parts that run between the farms, and then I'm adding out that little bit of roofing wedges just to kind of give the building overall a bit more contrast, a bit more shape to it. And then right here I was testing something, and I decided I was going to run these chains down, which I think could have been cool, except for it kind of made the build, when you're walking down and you're looking up at the large scale of the build, it made it feel extremely cluttered. Maybe it was too many chains, but I don't know. I didn't really like them, so I ended up cutting them after this little bit. I was just kind of building this out as sort of a test thing and seeing what I thought, but yeah, but I wasn't a fan. But yeah, if I've done these spreaders in the past for the farms, I absolutely love them because it almost looks like they're kind of infusing some kind of magical energy into the farm, for the plants and stuff. Like, those kind of like when you're in the store and they have those sprinklers that like water the produce. That's kind of like what this is, except it's like magic. It's like just feeding like magic, I don't know, fertilizer into the farm. So then right here, I quickly run through and just break out all these chains. And as I do so, I leave behind a bit of nitor. It's actually magenta dyed nitor in place of the lamp. Now it's not really, for some reason it's not sparking. There we go. Yeah, you can kind of see it right there. It's kind of sparking. The ones, I guess the spreaders are maybe in the way or whatever on the left side there. I couldn't see them. But I'm leaving behind magenta nitor. And I'm also kind of just changing this flooring just to add a little bit more kind of, not really contrast, but just a little bit more detail to the floor. Just to make it a little bit more interesting for us. So, yeah. And then that's pretty much it for the greenhouse build. Just kind of wrapping up at this point. And hope you guys like it so far. Okay, so we've got a pretty good dent in this. This is just, I'm kind of building this build because it's going to be fairly large, but it has different segments that are going to go to it. And this is kind of our phase one, which is the greenhouse. And this pretty much covers pretty much all of our seeds, our seed-based crops, all of Pam's, the vanilla crops. That's excluding, of course, chorus fruit. It's not in here, but that's going to be somewhere else. Also, our actually additions crops, and then I went ahead and put lotus, magic beans, ender lilies, and red orchids. If I find something that I'm missing, I wouldn't mind removing magic bean and putting that somewhere else. Because I'd like a fairly large magic bean farm, because that's going to automate, we automated that last time around in Enigmatica, and that pretty much took care of all of our like vanilla junk that we just don't like crafting. Pistons, comparators, redstone repeaters, stuff like that. Magic beans take care of. But if there's enough space in here and I need something to fill it out, I'll put a magic bean field here, and then if I decide I need more, I'll make another farm for it. But I hope you guys like the design so far. I'm going to go ahead and set the particles to all for a minute. I will say it does sometimes it impacts FPS. More so when I'm running the recording, the speed build recording stuff than running this recording software. It's not too bad right now. I will say that I am going to be getting some parts for a new computer before too long, just to upgrade. I mean, this one's not too bad, but I am going to be upgrading here soon. So. And I did get a creeper trophy, if you noticed. It was whenever I was building over here, I got that. So I just started piling up creeper stuff right here. But anyways, as I went, I did kind of label these. So we have a slot for everything. And then I was going to do those lamps hanging down, but I decided this looked a little bit better. I think because, of course, I didn't want this build to look like a big factory. Right? I didn't want it to feel like it's super techy or anything like that. Because, of course, that kind of goes against our overall build theme. We want it to feel magic-y and kind of rustic. And I felt like when I started playing this project, I was like, I've got to avoid it looking like an industrial factory as things come together. Because, of course, this is the greenhouse, but we're also going to have a crafting area. We're going to have kind of a shipping and receiving sort of area, a big storage area. There's a lot of components to this. So I've got to avoid it feeling like a factory and kind of having these big open spaces and adding these, I think adding these spreaders here and these little bits of, these are magenta nitor from Thaumcraft. I think that kind of fixes a lot of the issue. It actually, I think this feels like a very magical greenhouse. I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys like it so far. And then I went with the jungle wood because I think these trapdoors look pretty good. It doesn't always update visuals when you start getting a lot of particles and stuff in this pack. A lot of particles, a lot of roof tiles. This, just break that off. That wasn't meant to be here. But I said the jungle wood worked out pretty well here because we can grow cocoa beans without them needing like a dedicated farm. You know, they're just kind of spread out around uh, all the other farmland, but altogether it makes a pretty decent cocoa bean farm that the harvesters can handle. So what I want to do for the back end of this episode is I want to start filling this thing out. Let me pop over. Actually, what I might do is just start harvesting from here and just kind of filling out what we've got from these big farms. But if you recall, like I mentioned back forever ago, these are more just decorative farms, and it's high time we start setting up our automatic farms because these are going to help a lot. So what I need to do right now is I need to go through, I need to get every crop that we have currently planted, I need to slot it into its appropriate spot. And I'm just going to throw those chains down so I have that extra space. But I have to go through and I have to slot everything that we've got. And basically what I did was I just did at Pam's and just went through and placed out signs for everything. Of course, excluding tree produce, we're going to be farming that elsewhere. Originally, I thought about having it up along the center section that kind of runs through here. But I figured I kind of want this to have that just clean ceiling. So I decided against that. But yeah, I've got to go through and start slotting all of these. So I'm going to do that. And then once I finish that, then I have to go through the market and buy any missing crops that we need from here. And they're only about an emerald a piece, so they're not that bad. I've been kind of, that's why we did what we did last episode, setting up the bees and the ground traps. Because now I've been selling those honeycombs and those grubs and all that meat that we've been getting. I've been selling that for emeralds, so we should have plenty of emeralds to buy what we need. And then we'll be in business. But anyways, I'll be back in a bit. It's going to take a little bit because I have to find, where everything goes. Get these filled out. Of course, we have our harvesters kind of tucked away in here. So when you're standing on the railing looking out, you're not going to see the harvester down there running, but it is going to be there. And we can easily just run our conduits once we're ready down through here and off towards that direction. Now, these back here do overlap a little bit, but that's so I could farm through here, which is where our cactus, our sugarcane, and our melons are going to go. I've got a bit of work, but actually filling this out shouldn't be too difficult. It's just going to take a little bit to get all this stuff done. So I'll be back in a bit once I get this stuff sorted, and then we'll take a look at the finished product. And by the way, there is going to be a bit more work to this building, but it's exterior work that's going to require us to get further in the overall build to decide how I actually want to do that. Like down here, the underbelly of this is not done. We will finish that later, but I'm kind of thinking that this may lead to like a staircase that goes down, and we'll have our Pam's fish farms down here in a little space. I think it'd be a pretty good space to have it. So I've got to figure out kind of how I want to finish out the rest of the build before I finish out this section of the build, if that makes sense. So just a heads up there. But anyways, I'm going to get all this stuff slotted out. I will be back in a bit once I get this stuff done. Okay, I spent a bit of time filling this farm out. And you can see we should have all the Pam's crops are done. We do have all of those. Over here we've got all of this laid out. And I got to thinking I didn't put nether wart in this farm. So I added that in place of the magic bean so we can have a dedicated magic bean farm and not have it slotted here. The only thing is I have not managed to find lotus yet. You can't buy it in the market. I did get a nature's compass. I went out and explored. Flew around this area for a bit. No luck. I did spot an ice dragon though, so there was that. But I did fly around these areas. Never found any lotus. And I don't really have many snowy biomes nearby. So I'm going to have to see what I can do. Hopefully we'll eventually find it. It's possible we might be able to find it maybe in the Twilight Forest or something like that. But we'll just have to see. Worst comes to worst, we'll put something else here. Maybe put a little magic bean farm or something. But otherwise, everything else is filled out in this farm. So, yeah. And I think that's good. And then we just have to handle the tree crops, which will be pretty easy. But, okay, so once we get this build all in place, right, we'll have a section, like we'll have this greenhouse going that handles all of our seed crops. Then we'll have a place that does all of our Pam's tree crops. And then we're going to set up tree farms and flower farms. A lot of insulators, whatever. Phytogenic insulator. That just sounded funny. It's late. I've been working on this all day, so. But anyways, we'll set up some dedicated places for those for farming flowers and things like that as well. So this is going to be like our big all-purpose magical crop factory, basically. So, and then it's going to make all of our food. It's going to be a very, very big build, all in all. So a lot of like separate structures that kind of go together and make a big facility is my plan. So, and as you can tell from here, we're going to have like this 3-story front, which we'll get into this later. This is kind of just more for looks more than anything. And then these will go off into separate sections of the facility. And we're going to have, of course, some stairs that kind of come up right here and plug in. But we'll get into all of that later. I also need a place to do vines and, just a whole lot of things. We're going to have animals. Even though we don't necessarily need animals, we're going to have animals because we've got the ground traps, but I still want animals on the premise. They probably just won't be automated. May have some cows for milking and maybe some chickens for laying, maybe. We'll see. But anyways, I think I'm going to end out this episode here. I hope you guys enjoyed phase 1 of this build. I'm hoping to just do, because of course at episode 25, we're going to have I guess probably do like an overall base tour. It'll be probably either episode 25 or 26, depending on if we're in the middle of a project. I'm not going to stop in the middle of a project. We'll finish out that project. But chances are we're just going to be speed building up until the world download, because I'd like to get a bit of this in place for you guys before the world download comes up. So I think we've got a bunch done for the first world download, but of course we still have a lot left to do. A lot left to do on the base. So as far as an aerial view, I think it's really, there's big structures that are starting to take shape across the build here between these things. This is pretty much what all we've been working on since the dawn of this series. So, but anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already to stay updated with when new videos come out. And I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe. I'll see you guys then.